So this first diagram, this shaded angle and this shaded angle are what we call alternate interior angles. They're called alternate interior angles because they're on opposite sides of the transversal, so that's what makes them alternate. They're on opposite sides. And they're interior because they're both inside the two lines, so that's what makes them interior. So I want to know, what is another pair of alternate interior angles? Well, here's the only other one that's inside the line on this part of the intersection. So that means that across the transversal, also inside, would be that. So those are my two pairs of alternate interior angles. And what we talked about earlier was that, oh wait, hold on, let me write it differently. If my lines are parallel, and in this case, I know they're parallel because of this marking right here. If my lines are parallel, then my alternate interior angles, sometimes I abbreviate it as AIA just to save myself some writing. My alternate interior angles are going to be congruent. So that's only true when the lines are parallel. So we noticed that when we translated this down to its corresponding angle. And since the lines are parallel, the corresponding angles are congruent. And then this and its vertical angle would be congruent. So then that means the alternate interior angles would be congruent. So I wrote this in if-then form. This is what we call a conjecture. It's if, and then I have my hypothesis. So the hypothesis is what I know is true. I know these lines are parallel because they are marked with these arrows. And then we've got then, and then this is my conclusion. The alternate interior angles are congruent. So that's what I'm trying to show is got to be true. So my hypothesis is what I know, and my conclusion is what I'm trying to show. These are an example of same-side interior angles. They are on the same side of the transversal, and they are interior because they are inside the two lines. Okay, so if I were to find the corresponding angle that goes with this one, it would be down here. And my corresponding angles are going to be congruent. But what you'll notice now, these aren't congruent angles. They're not vertical angles anymore. Instead, they are a linear pair. They're a straight angle pair, which means they are supplementary instead of congruent. All right, so I can say if my lines are parallel, lines are parallel, that's my hypothesis. That's what I know because of the angle mark or the arrow markings. So if my lines are parallel, then my conclusion, I can say that my same side interior angles, well, this time they weren't congruent, they were supplementary. All right, so the other pair, it asked you to highlight the other pair of same side interior angles. It would be those two angles. Okay, so let's take some right side notes now. Remember, anytime I ask you to take some right side notes, that means that the notes that I'm writing for you, you should put on the right side of your notebook, on your interactive notebook, under today's title and essential question. And I want you to make sure that you are copying everything down that I'm writing. After I go through this, it's all still on the pear deck as well. So if you don't have enough time to copy everything down, you can still get it from the pear deck. So let's start with our alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are angles that are on the opposite side of the transversal. That's why they are called alternate, because alternate means opposite side. And they are interior because they are inside the lines. So if I look at this diagram, A and B would be alternate interior angles. So make sure you copy this diagram down on your notes as well, including the markings that tell me that these two lines are parallel. And what we learned today is that my alternate interior angles will be congruent only when the lines are parallel. So we had that conjecture, that if-then statement that said if the lines are parallel, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. All right, so there's my diagram of alternate interior angles. Next, I have same side interior angles. Same side interior angles are angles that are on the same side of the transversal. That's why we call them same side. And they are inside the lines. That's why they are interior, because the word interior means inside. So in this diagram, A and B are same side interior angles. Draw this diagram. Make sure you include the markings that those two lines are parallel, because what we learned about same side interior angles is that they will be supplementary when the lines are parallel. So I'm going to highlight that because one of these are congruent, but these are supplementary. Really important thing that my students tend to get wrong a lot when we're learning all of these different angle relationships with two lines and a transversal is they think that these angle relationships only exist when the lines are parallel. But that's not true. I can have alternate interior angles even when my lines aren't parallel. So let's say I had this line and this line and I had a transversal. Those lines are not parallel, but this angle and this angle would still be considered alternate interior angles. It's just that since my lines aren't parallel, they're not going to be congruent. So the angle relationship exists whether or not the lines are parallel. It's just when the lines are parallel, there's something more that's special about them.